the vintage tears. I've been storing them up for years. Vintage tears. Been storing them up.
Today on the podcast, we are featuring the Fremont, California-based Americana blues rock musician Nancy Wenstrom. Learn more about her and listen to her track Vintage Tears. Welcome to the Eat, Sleep, Breathe Music podcast, where we talk all things music. I'm your host, Jeanette Kinzel, music blogger and enthusiast. Let's get started with today's episode. Just popping in to give you a heads up. This podcast contains paid promotional content. That means we were compensated for the feature. All opinions are our own, and we only choose to represent music that we truly dig. Now on with the show. Hey everyone, welcome to Eat, Sleep, Breathe Music Podcast. My name is Jeanette and I am your host. For those of you who may have not listened before, we have a weekly podcast where we review music and also interview artists and have other guests on from time to time. Today we are featuring the vocalist, guitarist, and songwriter Nancy Wenstrom, who was born in Houston, Texas. She had grown up as an Air Force brat, living everywhere from Azores, Nebraska, California, and Washington, D.C., as well as Alabama, before moving to the Bay Area to attend UC Berkeley. Nancy has been working professionally as a musician in the Bay Area for over the past 40 years. She plays and sings various genres, including rhythm and blues, rock, pop, jazz, and country. She has also toured and recorded with various artists in the Bay Area. As a solo artist, she fronted her own bands and recorded 8 indie solo albums. Wenstrom was raised on a diet of blues and rock and roll. She started studying the piano at age 8 and picked up the guitar around age 12. It was the inspiration from artists like Jimi Hendrix, Jimmy Page, Jeff Buck, and the Allman Brothers that made her want to take up the electric guitar. She started her career as a professional musician in her early 20s and has been playing ever since. Her music has an influence of the blues and rock and roll, which she was raised on. It also has themes of letting go, which she has experienced in the transient life as both a child and currently as a working musician. After diving into Nancy Wenstrom's music, I found that I really was digging this song. It's not so much country as it is blues and Americana. I personally myself, I'm not really a big country person, but I do like Americana music and rock and roll and blues. So there was something that appealed to me about this song. I think it was the bluesy guitar riffs. Vintage Tears is one of the newer tracks from Nancy Wenstrom's latest album, Inside Story. It's always fun to learn how these songs come about, and this song was actually inspired by a friend of hers who was in a situation with a woman who, I guess, she had more feelings for him than he did for her, and the lyrics talk about that storm that starts brewing when someone has that realization that the love affair isn't going anywhere and it's not going to work out. And it's like once you face that moment and the fear, and then you're penting up all this emotion, and then once you accept it, you kind of release your tears. So Vintage Tears, which is pretty clever. I like the thought of that. Having a good cry definitely can help get out that emotion. And that's what the song is about. It's about the relief that happens after a good cry. And Nancy says that the song was also inspired by, things that she's experienced. She said that for her, this experience in crying, it was an acceptance and it was the beginning of healing for her. And I totally agree. And I don't know if any people out there are criers, but I know I tend to cry sometimes, and I totally feel better after having a cry. So it is therapeutic, and it's an interesting concept, and I like the theme of the song, and I like the music that goes with it. It's got that sadness, country feel, but also like a bluesy riff from the guitar. This track's got a lot of heart and emotion, even just from the few opening notes. The instrumentation starts and it's got the It's got like the guitar colliding with the drums and the tambourine. It's very exciting. It's very like, ooh, what's going to happen next? And once the chorus hits, it's like this infectious sound that you're going to want to sing along to, and you'll be humming along a couple hours after you finish listening to it. Listening to this track, I would say, I never heard a sad song sound so good. Wenstrom creates like some mean country blues with sweet melodies, and she adds in these witty lyrics that just make for like a really great track. With that being said, I think now is a great time to share the track for your listening enjoyment. Here is Vintage Tears by Nancy Wenstrom.
The clouds are hanging low. Life that's all around me is about to blow, and I got nowhere to go but down with all my fears, down in the cellar to hide my vintage tears. I've been storing them up for years. Vintage tears. Been storing them up for years. Now I'm crying. Vintage tears. Drops on my face has put me in my place. Nowhere to hide from the truth of this disgrace. The storm is building steady and slow. No place to go but down in the cellar with all my fears and my vintage tears. I've been storing them up for years. Vintage tears. Ooh, I've been storing them up for years. Now I'm crying. I'm crying. Vintage tears. Our season has passed. I knew it couldn't last. I knew it all the time, baby. You were never mine. The sky is black and the clouds are low. Nowhere to go but down in the cellar to hide my vintage tears. Oh baby, yeah. Vintage tears. I knew you were never mine. Vintage tears.
We would love to know what you think about this track. You can tell us in a comment on our podcast episode webpage or leave us an audio comment at the link in the episode summary. For more information on Nancy Wenstrom, check out her official website at www.nancywenstrom.com. That's NACYWENSTROM.com. You can also follow her on Facebook at Nancy Wenstrom Music, NACYWENSTOMMUSIC. On Twitter, you can find her at Bad Swede Songs. That's BADSWEDESONGS. And as Nancy Wenstrom Cantina on Instagram. That's NACYWENSTROMCATANIA. If you're looking for more new music, be sure to subscribe to our podcast. See our other podcast episodes and as well as our music features on our website at www.eatsleepbreathemusic.com. That's EATSLEEPBREATHEMUSIC.com. Thanks so much for listening to the Eat, Sleep, Breathe Music podcast. To find new music and learn more about what we do, you can check out our website at www.eatsleepbreathemusic.com.